Time to hit the road. Never mind. I'll find a new route. Turn right. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Finally, we are here. Let's do this.
Children, that they could possibly know who this person was.
Then what?
Today gave us a lot of
Ready
hope.
to
We're
turn
just
left.
so grateful for the chance to share our story with you and your audience.
Karim Aboushbak is a permanent resident of
Turn
Canada,
left.
trapped in Gaza with his family. He was in Gaza City. On Sunday, protesters led by families of Israeli hostages took to the streets to call for the release of their loved ones still held in Gaza. For more, I'm joined by Emmanuelle Elbaz Phelps. She is an independent journalist based in Tel Aviv and the correspondent for Le Point in Israel. We spoke to her earlier this morning before connecting with Karim.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. We are hearing, of course, that there has been some strikes in Gaza City. We'll get to that here in a moment. But first of all, what can you tell us about this proposed deal that the Qatari and Egyptian mediators put forward?
We don't have all the details yet, but what we know is that Hamas has given his positive response, saying that they will agree to this release of 10 hostages, not 10 in one day,
Get
but
ready to
probably
turn right.
8 on the first day and 2 at the end of the 60 days. And then there would be another round of negotiations
Turn
and also
right.
maybe getting to a second and last part of a deal. The idea is that it's really similar from what we know to what we call the Witkoff deal. So
Get
it's
ready to
like
turn left.
two-stage deal. Now that's what the Israeli side is trying to
Turn
say
left.
now. The Israeli side is saying, and we hear that from sources close to the Israeli government, they say, we won't accept a partial deal anymore. We want an all-in deal, which means all the hostages, Israeli hostages held in Hamas, have to be released. But what we know is that this deal that is discussed right now, and everybody's waiting for the answer of the Israelis, is very similar, if not exactly almost the same as the Witkoff deal. So it's a rhetoric kind of point that the Israeli government is trying also for political inside reasons to communicate in that way.
The Israeli government has also said that it wants all of Hamas destroyed, and now we're seeing Gaza City under attack. It seems surreal to be talking about a
Go
ceasefire
straight.
when we know there have been increased attacks overnight. So what is the likelihood that the Israeli government, do you think, signs on to this?
There is a conflict inside of the Israeli government. The Israeli cabinet has been authorizing a plan to take over Gaza City. That's how they define it. They do not talk about occupation. They
Go
talk
straight.
about taking over Gaza City because an official occupation would have a lot of consequences on the international law domain and more. But you have inside the Israeli government, from Bezalel Smotrich, which is the finance minister from the far right, he's not happy with this plan because he says that the plans leave the window to Hamas to say, okay, we'll have a deal. And then the Israeli government would back down and not get into Gaza City. Now, the operation is not done yet. It didn't start. We have a lot of communication of IDF saying that tents are going in so they can move the population down south, that the army is getting around the city and ready to get inside. But from the first point, the plan was validated by the Israeli cabinet. It was
Stay
supposed
left,
to start
then
on
turn
October
left.
7th. It's a symbolic date, of course. By then, the government
Turn
asked
left.
the army to already displace all of the population from Gaza, saying that whoever would stay would basically be Hamas members and not the civil population. Now we heard Prime Minister Netanyahu ask the military, the IDF, a few times to accelerate the plan and to start before the first date. But it's not on yet. And there is a lot of speculation and discussion also among the Israeli sphere of, do Prime Minister Netanyahu really wants to go on with the plan, or what he wants is to pressure Hamas to accept a deal in the conditions that there can be the release of all the hostages. And then the government says it would be ready to stop the war, but only on the condition that not only the hostages are released by Hamas, but Hamas would put down his arms and would give up power in Gaza City.
We are seeing the BBC reporting that Palestinians are fleeing parts of Gaza City because this Israeli military has begun the first stages of this ground offensive. But are you saying that is not happening, or that's your understanding?
What we know from the IDF is that IDF is moving around, but is not inside Gaza City as much as I know, and is not starting already the operation as it has been validated. But there is also a sense and a movement and a communication that shows the citizens that they are going to be displaced. So I think that's one of the reasons that you can see some of the population inside Gaza that already goes south and already is moving, and there are now when I say that there is a question about whether the Israeli government really wants to go and do the plan and take control of Gaza City, it doesn't mean it won't. It's not bluffing. It's moving every day. It's moving. It's doing some preparation, but it has also sent orders to reservists and soldiers to come back because they need around 50,000 to 60,000 soldiers for these kinds of operations, not only inside Gaza City but also around, to also be inside the Gaza Strip. So all of the soldiers have not been called up yet, so the operation is not on.
What does Hamas hope to get out of this deal?
Well, Hamas wants to survive, and Hamas, I think we have to say that very clearly also when we have this discussion, is that Hamas is the one who kidnapped these persons.
Turn left.
And Hamas is the one who attacked on October 7th and took the hostages, killed some of them, and still has 20 alive and 30 dead hostages under his control. So Hamas could actually release the hostages. Of course, he doesn't want to. Hamas is asking the end of the war, complete end of the war, the complete withdrawal of IDF from the Gaza Strip. And Hamas, from what we know, has agreed to give up power if there is another alternative Palestinian power in control, and also the reconstruction of Gaza, the Gaza Strip, by money would come probably from the Gulf countries. But Hamas has not agreed until now to put down his arms. Although we've seen in New York from the French and Saudi initiative that all the Gulf countries, Arabic countries, the Arab League countries, the European Union countries and more have all signed up a document asking Hamas to not only give up power but also to put down the arms.
There is a lot of people in Israel itself now who are upset that this war is continuing for a variety of reasons. We saw large protests over the weekend in Tel Aviv. 400,000 people were estimated to have been there. Tell me a little bit about what the protesters' main concerns are. Is it the hostages, or is there concern about the Palestinian people as well?
It's mainly the hostages, of course, and actually we've seen while we are speaking, you and me, there are families of hostages taking a march inside of Israel, going to the border, and they are still active. It's not a one-day and one-time shot. It's all, of course, not the same numbers, but you have every day something going on. The main concern is that the Israeli society wants to see the hostages home.
Just before you go, what consequences do you believe Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces now, of course, as we've just talked about, both domestically with the hostages, of course, people are angry, but also internationally, if this ceasefire fails and the planned assault on Gaza City goes ahead?
It's really hard to predict how it's going to happen, and we hope, of course, in Israel it's not going to get to this point. But I have to add to that it's not only the fear of the hostages' life, there is also a real fear about soldiers. The army is mandatory in Israel, so there is no separation between civil life and soldiers and reservists that go to war. It's your neighbor, it's the guy that sells you the fruits, or the supermarket, the teacher of your children. So and when you hear the chief of staff, General Eyal Zamir,
get ready to turn
and we
left.
know from the security cabinet that he was against the plan. He will do what the political
Turn left.
echelon is asking him to do, but he was against this plan, and he talked of a death traps from different reports, also for soldiers, saying that would be very dangerous, the way this plan should be conducted of Gaza City. So this is the first time you hear this kind of opposition from inside the army, and there would be, I think, and you can hear also more families of soldiers and soldiers that are talking against this operation. Right. They do not believe that military pressure will end the war and release the hostages right now. So I think if the deal would not go on and would not be agreed and accepted by the Israeli government, and there's also a lot of reports of different occasions where Israeli government maybe made the wrong decision and could have accepted the deal and didn't before, different deals or similar deals, then there would be really, I think, bigger demonstrations. But right now, politically, Prime Minister is still safe, and he hears the demonstrations, he watches them, he knows, of course, of everything. I'm not sure it's really pressuring him. The international community, as I'm just going to finish and say that as long as Prime Minister is backed up by the White House, he can go on with any plan he wants to.
Emmanuel Elbaz Phelps, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
Emmanuel Elbaz Phelps is an independent journalist based in Tel Aviv and the correspondent for Le Point in Israel. You're listening to The Current Review. I'm Rebecca Zandbergen. The use of animals in lab research in Ontario is going to change. That's Premier Doug Ford's message. He was reacting to a report by the Investigative Journalism Bureau. It revealed that the Lawson Research Institute at St. Joseph's Healthcare in London was using dogs, inducing extended heart attacks in them, and then euthanizing them to study their hearts. St. Joseph's says the research was approved by its internal ethics process, but it is nonetheless ending its use of dogs in research. Ontario's premier has promised to ban the use of dogs and cats in research in the province. I'm joined by three people who know a lot about the use of animals in medical research. Arthur Brown is a professor in the Department of Anatomy and Cell Biology at Western University and chair of its Animal Care Committee. Andrew Fenton is a professor of philosophy at Dalhousie University and an animal bioethicist. And Charu Chandrasekhara is the founder and executive director of the Canadian Centre for Alternatives to Animal Methods. Arthur, I'll start with you. What was your reaction when you heard about the research going on at St. Joseph's Healthcare using dogs?
I think first of all you have to understand is how much care we put into these animals and how much love and attention they get.
Right.
And so it's really disappointing to hear the comments of the Premier. I think it's understandable in a sense because the article was very emotional and would pull at anyone's heartstrings. But just wish he would have kind of taken a breath, investigated, thought about it, even contact someone at our university, including maybe myself or one of the veterinarians, and had a thoughtful discussion. So I think what this particular problem needs is maybe what we're doing this morning, is having a really thoughtful and nuanced discussion about really one of the major things that I think as a society we need to think about.
Arthur, we're going to do that this morning, but before we go on, I have to ask, because you said the care that the dogs get and the love they receive. However, nonetheless, we do know that those dogs heart attacks were being induced in those dogs. So how does that compute?
Humans have heart attacks too. The reason why this research is done is just because we want to make a difference. Research involving animals saves lives. It improves lives. The only reason to do this is because of a concern for human suffering and human death. At the same time, maybe this is kind of carving out the area of discussion, at the same time there's incredible concern for the animals that are involved. And so there's this constant tension, this constant going back and forth. We have to make sure the animal's okay. That is the touchstone. That is the most important part. But then we want to proceed with our science. And so we try to very carefully balance those two things so we get the scientific advance at the least possible animal harm.
Charu, what about you? When you heard about what was going on at St. Joseph's Healthcare and these beagles specifically, what did you think?
I actually had access to the privileged information. I read through almost 100 pages of animal care and use protocols at St. Joseph's Hospital. I was appalled, to say Obviously, animal research is still the gold standard. That's what it is in our modern culture of science. But to see the kind of experiments that were being done here, I was actually shocked. The intensity, the invasiveness of this research, and the biological implications of it, we could talk about this for an hour to see how most of this work wouldn't actually translate well to humans. And the worst fact was that there are already researchers around the world that are doing the exact same thing, looking at what happens after a heart failure, how the heart recovers. All of that can be traced the same way with humans who are going through diagnostic imaging as part of their treatment regimen. And this is happening around the world already.
But Charu, there's a lot to talk about there, and we'll get to some of it. But Andrew, I want to go to you because what I think would provide some context for this conversation, because St. Joseph's Healthcare was singled out in this report. But how often are dogs and cats being used for research in Canada right now?
Well, we have the latest data reports from the CCAC have about 16,000 used. They'll be used in varying studies of severity.
Stay left,
because there
then
are
turn
varying
left.
levels of it. What jumped out to me about what was being reported, and again, this all
Turn
has
left.
to be qualified by, I'm dependent on what folks like Jen Olson and Rob Cribb reported in IJB, what the whistleblowers say in the videos. What jumped out to me as an animal ethicist and, someone who publishes in animal bioethics were the empty cages. So there's enrichment questions here. The fact is that some of these dogs seem to be allowed to regain consciousness despite what's been done to them. That jumped out to me. The fact that they're euthanized, and that's regardless of whether
This is where it ends.
live life well rehomed after the use in science jumped out at me as well. And so it was a reminder to me. So human research went through an ethics turn in the last quarter of the 20th century, and this is a reminder that we're still waiting for an ethics turn in the scientific use of animals.
Arthur, what is your take on that? Because some of what I'm hearing is that though animals are still used in research frequently, there are degrees at which you can use them safely and humanely. And what you learned about what was happening at St. Joseph's Healthcare, what kind of grade do you give that group then?
Yeah, so there's bumpers put up on the research, and this is provided by national standards that the CCAC publishes and tells us what we have to do. I think people have to realize that these dogs that are not pets, they have never had an experience of lying on a couch by a fire. So it's a different kind of environment that they're used to and that they're acting into. But we are very careful to stay within standards and to even go above standards. We really have a very careful look at this. It's not just the researchers, and you shouldn't have that idea. This work is overseen by vet techs, veterinarian technicians, and we have four veterinarians, all of them who have a great deal of experience with all sorts of them, including dogs.
What did you make of the argument from, just want to jump in because it's a key point here. Charu said, for instance, that the research that was being done there could have been and has been completed in other areas, and that kind of research is going on around the world not using animals.
Yeah, I would challenge her on that. I think we might have to agree to disagree. I'm not, first of all, a cardiac biologist, and maybe you need more of a specialist, but I think even when she mentioned that there's MRI studies going on across the world, the reason why those MRI studies are there is because there were initial studies in dogs showing us how to interpret the MRI studies, how to look at them and know from the MRI how much heart tissue is still viable and how much heart tissue has died in the course of a heart attack. All that understanding has been brought forward through these kinds of studies that were done at St. Joe's. So yeah, there's a next step, always going to be a next step in research once we've sort of cleared a certain bar on the animal research, that we can then further the research in humans, and I'm all for that, and I'm all for alternatives. But there's a certain step when we go from molecules and cells, and we want to go to human, we need something in between. after we do that in between, it's going to be some sort of large animal model, and it might be dog, it might be something else, depends upon the biology. But then once we've done that, then I think Charu is absolutely right. We can do a lot of studies past that point in humans.
You know, Charu, the Harvard Medical School has a website that's called What Animal Research Has Given Us, and it has a long list of the ways in which we've learned things through animal research, organ transplantation, blood transfusion, in vitro fertilization, cell biology, genetics, the list goes on and on. Is there a case to still use animals for scientific research?
So I have said this before publicly. We're not ready to end all animal testing tomorrow morning, but we're certainly ready to replace, reduce, and refine the vast majority of animal experimentation that's going on. And there's no denying that animal research in the past has led to significant